Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT Expert Members podcast, where I'm going to be briefly joined by three of our fantastic expert members to talk about an Arsenal topic which is in the news right now, and that is a pretty heavy topic. They've chosen very, very strategically to come on for today's show, as we're going to be discussing the in-depth ins and outs of Mesut Ozil leaving Arsenal. We're going to be looking back at some of our highlights and also discussing him actually leaving the club and what that might mean for this and any upcoming windows as well. So let's crack on with today's show. So sit back, relax and enjoy the next 45 minutes to an hour of Arsenal chat. Hello guys, how are we doing? Are we well? Are we all good?
Yeah, all good, Tom. How you doing?
Hi, Tom. How you doing? You all right?
All good, guys. Let's go through you one by one and introduce you all to our panel. First off, he's been on before. He knows what this is all about. It's Jared. How you doing, mate? You well?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Always a pleasure to have you on, fella. And have you been hopping on to Ian? We must call him Ian from now on. We've been on his channel recently and helping out with a Gooner Crack at all.
We haven't done a Gooner Crack in a little bit. I know he's kind of getting spread pretty thin. He's doing a lot of Gooner Pod stuff. He's been on with you, so he's a little all over. So it's not dead, but Gooner Crack's been on a little bit of a hiatus.
Yes, he has like his what's the word I want to use? Responsibilities in a bit of a twist. As soon as you get kind of corrupted by Mike and Andy, you've got no hope.
It's a slippery slope dealing with Mike.
It's a slippery slope. It definitely is. Making his debut on the show is Raheel from the Real Talk FC. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. Great being on your show. And yeah, you're doing a great job, so keep it up.
Thanks, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you on. And as with any of our new members, these guys have not been on before. And if you'd like a chance to come on, just join up as an expert member. I mean, the main kind of prize is joining the Discord server, which is a really great community of people having a chat every day about Arsenal. And finally, making up our panel of three is Pablo Mira. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
Hi, Tom. How you doing? I'm good, thank you. And thank you for having us. It's a really good opportunity, actually, you give us to be able to do such things like this. So
no, it's my pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you on. And I mean, it's a hell of a topic we've got to discuss today. It's kind of, it is a little bit historic because it's one of those periods of time at the club that I genuinely never kind of saw ending, even though we knew it had to end at some point, especially with his contract running out. But it just seemed like it was never going to finish. And it's just Ozil would just become part of the furniture and stay around at Arsenal forever, which, according to some rumours regarding his box, is actually going to happen. But we'll get onto some of that stuff in a bit. We're going to go in reverse order. So, Pablo, we're going to start with you. Just kind of give me your reaction to Ozil leaving.
To be honest with you, I was actually really happy when the news came through. Yeah, which is a little bit sad because I kind of really liked Ozil when he first joined the club, and I remember the day he signed, there was all that buzz around Ozil's coming from Real Madrid, and it's a shame that it's ended like this. So
Yeah, it is a shame that it's kind of gone this way. I understand what you're saying. Like it's you're happy but sad. It's an element of relief. It's kind of that moving on process. When he signed, were you? I imagine as many Arsenal fans, but it was kind of a stepping on point to the next level for Arsenal, wasn't it, in the transfer market?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the buzz. I remember the buzz around when Ozil signed. I mean, I remember watching on Sky Sports News at the time, and it was literally brilliant. But I've got to be honest, I know we'll probably go on to this later on, but I feel that the club let him down at the beginning.
Okay, well, we'll definitely get onto that, and we'll talk about some of the reasons as to why, because there's so many opinions. I mean, Raheel, I'd love to hear your kind of views on him going, and we'll get onto kind of views about him in general. But him leaving specifically, are you gutted? Are you relieved? Happy? What are you feeling?
I would say relieved, and relieved in the sense that this whole O word and the Ozil saga is going to end. That split, we have like 1,000 splits between Arsenal fans, but that one split will at least be out. That was the Wenger split. Yeah, exactly. So in that sense, I am relieved, a little bit sad because for me, he didn't really live up to his expectation. He gave us, I think, 2 or 3 great years, and then the later stage of his career at Arsenal wasn't great. So yeah, relief, and I'm just glad that we can move on. And I think there's a lot of players in the squad, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later, that need to leave this club so that we can move forward and hopefully things look a little bit better into the future. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure, and we'll definitely kind of look ahead in a little bit later on in the show. But it's relief is probably quite an apt word, I think, for many people. Jared, are you any different to Pablo and Raheel about your thoughts around him? Is it more sadness for you, or again, is it more of a relief?
At this point, I mean, I'm glad that he has gotten a chance to move on, and I think it's good for Arsenal, and I think it's good for him too. I think it's one of those things that the point it's gotten to, it's kind of best for all parties involved that the split happens. It is a little sad in the sense that it's hard to imagine Arsenal making a signing now that would have the sort of impact and buzz in the fan base that it was when we got Ozil. I mean, that was at the time, he was the best player in the world at his position. And everybody just blew up with happiness when he came in, and rightfully so. He was in his prime. He was a phenomenal player. I feel like that gets kind of taken away from him now because the last 18 months has been a little bit, not what anybody would have wanted. And people try and kind of slight him and say, he wasn't ever as good as we thought, or he wasn't that great. But, he was a phenomenal player, best number 10 in the world for a number of years. And it's sad to see him go in that sense. But given the current situation and the way things have gone in the last year and a half, like I said, I think it's best for everybody that he's moved on. And I, for one, am surprised we got it done in January. I kind of thought he would be here through the summer. So I'm glad to see it happen. I think that's a really good start to our transfer window. And hopefully we have some more stuff going in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I suppose I'll probably save that bit for a little bit later on, talking about what this kind of means and the impact of that, and maybe the perception of some members of the board because of getting this done now. I've asked the chat box how they're kind of feeling about it. Peter sums up what I think is the feeling quite a lot of people, who says he doesn't really bother. He's not really bothered, to be honest, about it, which is completely fair enough. He's a player that's not involved in the squad, hasn't really been part of our plans for quite a while now, and doesn't really affect what's going to happen on the pitch ultimately. So in that sense, for sure. Martino says, bit sad, but happy at the same time. There's that conflict of kind of feelings. Russ Morgan says, sad it hasn't worked out with Ozil, but glad it's all over now. Which actually kind of a point I want to stick with, saying it hasn't worked out. Because, Pablo, when we look back at his 7 years, and it sounds crazy to think it's been 7 years of Mesut Ozil at Arsenal, what are you going to remember about it the most?
To be honest with you, that goal in the Champions League, that was
Ludogorets.
Phenomenal. Oh, I remember that like it was yesterday. It was really good. I remember more his early days as well when he came in, just having that buzz. He kind of lifted up the team. We got the FA Cup, and from then on was just having that feeling of thinking, do you know what? We're actually going in the right direction for once. And as I say, unfortunately, it didn't quite work out like that for him.
He was kind of the perfect player for Arsenal when he joined, because we were obviously still under Arsene Wenger, wanted to play like this passing, attractive style of football. And if there was a player at the time that was playing that style of football, trying to play those passing behind, those incisive balls, it was kind of Ozil. We'll come on to the reasons as to maybe why it didn't work out in a bit. But again, Raheel, like in terms of Ozil, when you look back at his 7 years, what is it that's sticking in your mind about the German?
His partnership with Alexis Sanchez. I think when they played together on that pitch with Ramsey and Cazorla, that the Wenger ball was in motion when they were at the top of the game. So, and you can see when Sanchez moved to Man United, both their careers went on a downward slope. So that partnership we had with Sanchez was just amazing to watch. And I remember Wenger also mentioned it in one of his interviews when they asked him what do you think happened with Sanchez? And he basically said he doesn't have Mesut Ozil. And it's the same can be said about Mesut Ozil, because ever since Sanchez left the club, he's been a shadow of himself. So, those days when we actually watched beautiful football consistently, I will remember that. And of course, Pablo already mentioned that we had a 9-year trophy drought. And when Ozil came in, that kind of ended. Now, he didn't have like a direct impact on each and every game, but just that personality to have in the dressing room was so important at that time for Arsenal, because we hadn't signed a big player in years. So, I mean, there will be a lot of good memories. It's just, it's just a shame towards the end it had to end the way it did.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, especially maybe some part of the younger generation, because 7 years is such a long time for a player to be at a club. And when you think about some of the younger kids, and I think back to my memories of football, my years of remembering between the ages of say 12 and like between 10 to 15, I suppose, is a lot more hazy than my more recent memory of things over the last 10 years. And there'll be some fans that are 18 years old now, and Ozil would have signed when they were just 11, which is crazy. And so they won't necessarily have seen or remember too well the best times that we had, and their most recent memories will be the ones that stick in the most, which maybe is a reason why it's the negative side of Ozil is emphasised so greatly. I suppose. Jared, what about you? What's kind of the things that stick in your mind the most about Ozil's time? Oh, you're on mute, fella. Classic 2020 problem.
Of course, right? Sorry about that. So, like Raheel said, he talked about the partnership with Alexis, and I think that was huge. For me, it kind of marks the end of an era. You know, we cry out now for a great midfield, and we want to be strong in the midfield. And, you know, he's kind of the last piece to fall when we had Cazorla, Ozil, Ramsey, and we had all those great moments from our midfield. You know, he's sort of the last one there. So it's a little sad to see him go. And it feels a little bit, you know, kind of in like a lion, out like a lamb. When he came in, there was just such a buzz. And when he got his first goal in the Champions League against Napoli, everybody goes crazy. And now it's just kind of, you know, he's sort of faded out and gone on, which, like I said, I think is good, but it's a little sad to see somebody who had such a big impact at a club go out fairly unceremoniously after 7 years, whatever it is.
Yeah, I suppose it is unceremoniously. I want to highlight the tweet that I put out earlier on today, because I put it out saying, what was your best memory, positive memory of Ozil? I didn't really, I knew what would happen if I put out memory. People would just be like, him leaving. So I wanted to kind of steer it in that direction. So I think it'd be nice to go through some of these. I haven't checked them, so prepare if there's anything too bad. James, our good boy James Cookie, if you remember Cookie, back in the days, come on the show a few times, says Napoli at home felt like the game where he really announced himself. That goal, I believe it was Pepe Reina that was in goal for Napoli that day as well. And he just kind of sliced across the ball and it just curled away in a Champions League group stage match. Archie United at home, 3-0, 20 minutes. Also Bayern at home, 2-0. Ozil scoring that second goal, never been in the most appropriate time. And that atmosphere that we had at the Emirates when he scored. I was at the game when we beat Liverpool 4-1. And I remember talking to people about, I've never hugged so many strangers when that fourth Olivier Giroud goal went in that day. But the free kick from Ozil, I think it was against Mignolet that was in goal. And you never really see those types of free kicks where they're to the keeper's side and still go in. And it was just, an unbelievably good take of a free kick. Ed, who's also, I believe, one of our members, Easy Isle, says, first time with my daughter at the Emirates, a 6-0 thumping of Ludogorets in the 2016. She yelled his name when Mesut was coming over to take a corner in front of us and he waved back. Nice little gesture. And there's been quite a few nice little videos of people taking like these clips of Ozil coming over for corners and putting his hand on the badge and stuff like that. And yeah, but let's highlight some of the people in the chat box that are with us this evening, putting in their kind of memories as well. Matthew says the goal against LFC in the 4-1 win, going 3-0 up against Chelsea, the win against Bayern when we blitzed United at home. I remember that goal against Bayern because no one thought it had gone in at the time. And I think it's the only time, I think I'm right in saying this, in the entire history of football where the official that's on the goal line has ever given a decision. That's the only time in the whole of footballing history where it's ever gone to that guy standing on the goal line. Russ Morgan says the back heel assist against Palace is one to remember. Tulip says the 3-0 against Chelsea and the 3-3 against Liverpool. The Winter Wonderland from the commentary was just perfect in that moment. I remember I was in... for that goal, I was in a pub where we live called the Cricketers, and I'd gone to the toilet when the two goals that were scored in quick succession went in. Of course, I missed both of them and came out, and everyone's going mad because I think we were 2-1 down, and we went 3-2 up. So yeah, it's just a luck.
They probably told you to stay in there the rest of the game just in case.
Yeah. And then I stayed out and watched us draw. So that's what happened.
Can you just stay in the bathroom for all the Arsenal games and see if it works?
Just going to sit in the bathroom now and miss all of their game. But to be fair, ever since I've jumped on with Hugh Izzy, we've been winning games. So I kind of need to stick around with him.
Yeah, please do.
See how it goes. Let's kind of look at what this then means. Because, and we'll go in reverse order again, Jared, starting with you. I had said on the channel a few weeks back, and I've had a few people tweet me Because I said if Edu doesn't sign anyone before Crystal Palace, I was like, yeah, just jumping on the Edu out trade, basically. I have flip-flopped, to use a horrific term, on this a bit. And I'm kind of more inclined to look at and reflect at what we've done in the early part of the window. The players that we've, say, Kolasinac moving on, Socrates looks like he's moving on. Ozil is obviously huge. Getting Saliba a loan deal, we may even do some business, which I look at as kind of a bonus, if anything, at this window. But do you think that the likes of Edu deserves credit for getting this situation kind of moved on and done, or are you very much of the mind that it should have maybe been resolved sooner, or did you not expect it to happen before the end of his contract?
Yeah, I think he does deserve credit for it. Like I mentioned earlier, if you asked me, I would have said Ozil's seeing out the contract. We'll get rid of him this summer and we'll all move on. So, while financially we're probably not getting a big gain out of him going, I think it's still, we're very quick to criticize him when he does something wrong, and that's fine. But on the other hand, when something good happens, I think we need to give credit where it's due. And Ozil's been hanging over the club for, a year and a half. I mean, when was the last time we saw an Arteta interview, pre or post game, that the first question wasn't about a guy who hasn't played a minute? It's every single one. So I think it does a lot for the club to have him gone. And going into January, I was actually talking with a friend of mine in late December, and he said, would you rather bring in new guys or get rid of all the guys that you want out? And I said, without question, I would take the latter. I think when there's, talk of people being unhappy in the dressing room and the team being a little bit split, there's so much to gain by getting that sorted out. So when we see Kolasinac go out, we see Ozil go out, sounds like Socrates is on his way out. I think all of that does a lot. One, in just paring down the number of players we have on the team. The less guys you have to sit out from the first team, the better. The less guys that are going to be unhappy in general. So I think that was really positive for us as well. But more than anything, I think it just takes away that constant at all times, where even still without playing, every Arsenal conversation revolves around Mesut Ozil, and then it was, he's not in the squad. Will he be added back to the squad in January? Where would the squad be without him? All of those things that just, they wear me out, and I'm just a fan. I can't imagine being involved in it, being Arteta, being on the team, where it's just nonstop talk about a guy who has had no impact this year. So in that aspect, I'm thrilled that the deal got done. And yeah, I would definitely give Edu some credit for getting it done. And as far as being a flip-flopper and Edu out, and, we've obviously hit a change of form in that same time from when you said that, I think my general rule with all things Arsenal is, regardless of what I think about it, I just wait 2 weeks. Because generally in that amount of time, something else has happened and we're on to the next thing. It's completely different.
Yeah. 2 weeks is quite a long time for Arsenal, to be fair. It changed very, very. The mood just before we drew against Crystal Palace in comparison to straight after the game is utterly stark in comparison. So absolutely crazy in that sense. Zamir in the chat says, yes, of course, give credit where it's due. But Lord actually disagrees. Raheel, I wonder what you think about this comment. It says, Edu deserves no credit for simply shifting players out, and I will only give him credit for the players that he brings in. What do you make of that?
I don't agree with that, because like Jared just mentioned, we have such a massive squad with so many players that are not, some players didn't even get on this in the squad. Ozil and Socrates. So it is really, you have to give credit to Edu, because I don't think people are realizing, and I know as Arsenal fans, we're always desperate for signings to come in because we've been so off the top for years. But there's a pandemic going on. If you think about it, how many teams have signed players? I can't think of any in the Premier League. I don't know if you can. I don't know around Europe how many big clubs have signed any players. The pandemic is real and it is affecting clubs. So the fact that Edu managed to get these players out, you have to give him some credit. It is a very difficult period for many of clubs, not just clubs, for everyone around the world. So I think he deserves quite a bit of credit for shifting we call it the deadwood out, and hopefully that creates space for someone else to come in. Whether it's going to be in the January transfer window or not, I'm not sure about that. The links to the players coming in have kind of simmered away a little bit. So I don't know if we're going to get, unless we have, as usual, like every transfer window deadline day signing to get us all excited and forget about all the players that we actually need. But yeah, so so it is. You do have to give him a bit of credit for shifting players out in this difficult market.
I'm looking at the. It's interesting you said you made me think about kind of the players that teams are bringing in, and I'm looking down through the transfer market website to see, and to be honest, they're all just like loans that are being returned. Yeah, there's like a couple of teams that have brought in like young guys. The Man City have brought in a young guy. West Ham have brought in Frederick Alves for 1.4 million. Who's a centre back that I doubt they'll use with the ones they've got there. West Brom brought in Robert Snodgrass, who obviously played today, and they brought him in for 99 grand. That's it. I've never seen such a low transfer from one Premier League club to another. That's
sorry, Tom. Can I just add something on Edu and Arteta? I think we forget, right? And I know it is difficult to be patient when you expect your club to be doing well, but we need to remember Edu and Arteta are very young at their jobs. So Edu only managed he was in the technical director or whatever role he was at Brazil for not that long. And then this is the first experience he has with the club. So we do need to keep that in mind as well, that it is also new. Now, he was hired by the Kroenkes, whoever brought him in. So it's not his fault. I mean, he got the job. So it is new. He is also learning on the job, just the way Arteta is. So I think we kind of have to be a little bit sympathetic with them. It is their first job. They're taking on a huge mess that was left. I don't like criticizing, but it was left by Gazidis and Wenger. Let's be real. All these players on high wages who we can't sell anymore. So it is a really, really tough job. And then on top of that, the COVID hit and the market is difficult. So yeah, I think we should just be a little bit patient with Edu and Arteta and just not jump on them at every small opportunity, because they have taken on a massive job. And only time will tell if they'll succeed or not.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it is a case of waiting to see. I know there are times where you can't wait and see. And there was kind of a period before Christmas where we were getting to the point where maybe we can't wait any longer, because it was getting to such a bad situation. But we've moved on from that now. And fingers crossed we continue to improve past that point. Just dipping into the chat again. Ish says he deserves credit. They had to play in it a certain way and they achieved it. The wages Ozil is on could get you 3 players, and I think that's talking about the wages you could pay to other players. You could get you a lot more than just 3 players. The wages that he was on. Martino says Ozil leaves, plus we will save money. I wouldn't think that was possible a week ago. Zamir says, how can we not give credit for getting rid of an unwanted player during the pandemic, which is a really good point that was brought up earlier on by you guys as well. But Thapello, just to balance the argument, says, I'll not give him credit for what he should have done in the summer. It's about negotiating the deal properly, like saying we'll pay 30% of the contract. I'll give him credit if he moves someone like Xhaka. Ironically, I think that if we'd have paid 30% of a contract for the year, it's actually... I'm trying to think if it works out the right way, because if it's 30% of a contract for 2 half seasons, that's more than you would pay if it was just 6 months completely for nothing. So I think actually we've saved more than just paying a 30% of the deal over the course of an entire season. So arguably we've done a better deal than that. But finally, Pablo, I mean, what do you kind of make around the Ozil and Edu and the executive maybe getting credit for this situation?
Yeah, well, I'll try not to be biased because I'm Brazilian. So the thing is, to me, I think we don't give Edu and Arteta enough credit for what they've done so far. I know they've brought in the likes of William, which, again, is just a terrible business for me, I personally think, but I could see where they was going with it in the first place. But since then, I mean, people are talking about not getting rid of players is not an advantage to Arsenal. That is the key to getting us back on track, because we've got so many deadwood at the moment, so many players on high wages. I mean, to try and get rid of all the deadwood in one transfer window is virtually impossible, especially with the players that we got, because nobody wants them. We don't even want them, but we have to have them. That's the problem, you know? So I think where people just want to see success straight away, and I get it because we're Arsenal. We've been successful for many, many years, yeah? But unfortunately, we got dragged down really badly by the previous owners, previous managers, and what have you. So these guys have kind of come in to try and fix that. You can't change that overnight. We really are going to have to be patient. We're going to have to allow them time to get rid of the players that people don't want. I mean, getting rid of Mustafi, getting rid of Socrates, all these sort of players that nobody wants them really, but we're stuck with them. So if you do manage to get rid of them before their contract ends, or manage to save money or actually earn money from them, you're doing well. Yeah, and in the Ozil situation, I'll be honest, I thought even in the last day we wouldn't have been able to get rid of him because he just didn't look like he wanted to go. He really didn't want to go. And then all of a sudden we've saved money and we've got rid of him. That in itself will make a massive difference to the team, I believe, because if my memory's right, when he got dropped out of the 25, that's when we took a big incline, when he got dropped out of the squad. If I'm not mistaken, that's what happened.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking
during that time. And I think it's because he's a big character in the dressing room. A lot of players really admire him. They've got a lot of time for him. And I think the way he got treated by the club must have had an effect on the players. And now with him going, that's probably going to make things better in the change rooms as well as the financial reason behind it.
Yeah. The impact when you have players around the dressing room that ultimately aren't getting played, have a negative view of their situation, you need to do as much as you can to move them on. The pandemic is a really difficult period to try and move players on anyway, because, I mean, in the summer, a lot of people criticised, including myself, the management for not moving on certain players that they didn't want. And I think they got a bit preoccupied with some of the deals, like with the Partey situation at the end and the Aouar situation, for how long that prolonged for, which meant obviously the Saliba loan deal never materialised either, even that was kind of agreed with Saint-Etienne. There was the Rekic deal, which also got delayed until January. That was only just completed because of the poor admin of the guys there. But you have to now give credit where it's due. Things are turning. We're only as good as our last match, and the last match that the executives have had is that of the Ozil situation. And in addition to that, the ones that they've got out the door already and look like they could be moving on, with Socrates going as well. So that's all a positive thing for me. Now, I suppose the conversation for the next 15 minutes or so before we then go into user questions kind of goes towards, what do Arsenal need to do in the creative area? Because even though it was very much the likely outcome that Ozil wasn't going to play again this season, we are very light in the central creative area, to the point where it is just Emile Smith-Rowe that is there. And if he gets injured or has to self-isolate, then we are without our only central creative midfielder. And we could be back to the point whereby we were earlier on in the season. So, Jared, do you think that, and I've had the discussion with a few people on Twitter today, and I said that I think signings are a bonus in this window. But I've had people come back to me with a completely fair point of saying that if we don't get any creative player in, even if it's on a short-term deal, it's a huge mistake, because we're being left with just Emile Smith-Rowe there.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I'm of the mind that I think if we do get a deal done for an incoming, it'll likely be a loan this year. I don't see us making a signing this January of a caliber of player that we all want to fill that position long term. I think just the cost there isn't something we're going to spend in January likely. I mean, I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see us go get a Buendia, because I think he's great and I think he would offer us a lot. I would just be really, really surprised to see that deal done in January. I think they're more focused on the outgoings, and also the re-signing of Rob Holding, which I thought was a great piece of business. I think one of the most underrated things when we talk about squad building is re-signing the talent you already have. All the money you save there. I mean, the cost to replace a 25-year-old English homegrown center back with Premier League experience is going to eat up a lot of our transfer budget. So I thought that was a really important piece too, moving forward to the summer. But like I said, this month I would expect possibly a loan, maybe someone to fill in a midfield spot. But I'd be surprised if we got a permanent signing that we're all kind of looking forward to. And I think not doing that, our position moving forward for the rest of the season, if we can't get a loan done, I think we're going to move forward with ESR in that spot. And I think we may see a situation where we have potentially Bukayo Saka try and cover. And I know number 10 is a difficult position and he hasn't played there. So my only grounds for kind of thinking he may be able to do a job there is that every other position he didn't play, we put him in. He's done a job and done pretty well. So I think, worst case scenario, they can't get a loan done in the last week of the window. I think that may be the fallback, that we kind of do nothing and save our money till summer. And I know people don't want to hear that, but I sort of understand the logic there if a good deal doesn't present itself.
Raheel, would you be very disappointed? And obviously, when people come on the show and it is your debut, and same for Pablo. Like I know that people can kind of what's the right way of putting this? Kind of a vision of what this show is. And I know I come across as a very positive guy and trying to put a positive spin on things quite a lot. So I want you to be honest about the situation. Don't feel pressured into thinking any different. And that goes the same for you, Pablo, too. Jared already knows this. But would you be frustrated, annoyed, or would you be okay if Arsenal didn't bring in anyone in during the January window?
I would be a little frustrated because, again, another transfer window goes and we're light on certain positions. And, of course, creative midfielder is one of them. I can think of two others right on top of my head, goalkeeper and left back.
Yeah.
So it's not just the creative midfielder that we're light on. We're light on a couple of other positions just to compete in the top 6 or top 4. So it will be a little bit frustrating, but I am realistic. I know that it's difficult to get in a player that will take us to that next level in this market. Like I mentioned before, it wouldn't be easy. And I don't want Arsenal to go down that route, getting someone in just for the sake of it, just to fill that hole. And we've done this in the past so many times, and it has come to bite us at the backside many times. So if we are, let's say, targeting OR or Buendia and we can't get them in January, I would rather wait till the summer window and get them in. I don't want us to just plug a hole and then go into the summer and we're like, oh, but we already bought a number 10 and it's not really working out. And then we're like, yeah, now we don't need an OR or a Buendia. So it would be frustrating, but I would understand if we don't. I think the best option will be like a loan signing in this market. Like we said, there's not a lot of clubs buying and selling. So a loan option would be the best way forward. And yeah, like Jared mentioned, if we don't get anyone in, then I guess we'll have to maybe try Saka in that number 10 role if we're giving Emil Smith-Rowe a break. But then I'm just worried that how many games is Saka really going to play? Because he's also, we forget, he is a 19-year-old kid. And even though he's brilliant and he's so talented, there will be a point in time where it's going to dip a little bit, or he might have to be rested. We can't be...
He did dip, I thought, against Crystal Palace.
And so did Smith-Rowe, but that was more tactical, I think, from Roy Hodgson, where he put 2 midfielders on Smith-Rowe and completely nullified our threat. So that's why we do need another body in there, someone who's able or is reliable just to get us through to the summer window and then get in. I would personally go for Awar. I think that's the caliber of players we need if we want to move forward. I'm not so sure about Buendia. To be honest, I haven't watched much of Buendia, so I'm not sure how good he really is. He might be brilliant. I don't know. But yeah, I would go in back for Awar in the summer because there's no way I think we'll get him in the January transfer window. I don't think we're even linked with him because, I mean, Lyon are, I think, on top of the French league. Yeah, and they're still in the Champions League. No, they're not in Europe. Sorry. No. Yeah. But still, I mean, why would they leave?
Of course,
a league title to come to a mid-table club, which we are at the moment. I know. I'm just realistic, man. I'm being realistic. It's painful, but it is what it is.
If you don't know much about the names that Raheel has said there in Awar and Buendia, you can type in the words Awar Tactical Breakdown into your YouTube and you can get educated on those players. So definitely check those videos out on the channel. Captain JT says, if we can't get the right person now, I'd rather keep the money in the bank and wait until the summer. Sam Tressida also put in a comment, I think, was it? Yes, it was. Do you want a Corolla now or a Ferrari later? We will be better off waiting until the summer and take a loan until then. I've also seen a few people saying that we should go for possible loan deals to cover that spot. If you guys watched the video I did in the interview with Alvaro Romeo, and I asked him about Isco as a possible player because we were linked to Isco as a short-term deal, and very much he was on the side of he's not the type of player you should bring in on a short-term deal. He's barely played for Real Madrid in the last year and a bit. If you're expecting Isco to come in and have an immediate impact and save your season, if we're being honest, we're probably still going to play Emile Smith-Rowe in a lot of the games that we would have Isco on loan. So it's unlikely that a player of Isco's caliber, even though he is very good technically, would be able to come in and have an impact. Same with Christian Eriksen, same with these other players that we've been linked to. Pablo, what's kind of your thoughts around this situation then? Would you be frustrated, annoyed, or would you be understanding if Arsenal didn't bring anyone in this window?
I'll be annoyed if we don't sign a goalkeeper, because I think we're one injury away from really, really struggling.
You don't trust Robertson?
Trust my 4-year-old more. That's wrong. I shouldn't say that. But he's, from the games that I've seen from him, I mean, if he was just, God forbid, and something happens to Leno and we have to rely on him to get us through the season and FA Cup and Europa or whatever, I can't see us standing much of a chance, regardless of how well our defence has improved. If you haven't got a solid goalkeeper there, that will affect the defence because they won't have the confidence in the guy behind them like they have on Leno. So to me, I think that's a priority. Everything else, we can kind of move players around and work around and stuff like that. So I would prefer to wait, like the other guy said, to get the right player or even the possibility of a loan. Not necessarily Isco, but I think, I can't believe I'm going to say this because he's a ex-Tottenham player, but someone like Eriksen has played in the Premier League would probably come in and not take much adjustment to the Arsenal team or the league or anything like that. So it's not a player that I would personally want at Arsenal full-time, but it's someone that can give Smith-Rowe a bit of a break. Because I know Jared said about moving Saka into sort of the cam position. He would probably do an amazing job there. But then who are you going to put on the right? You're relying on William and Pepe again. So we're kind of in that situation that I think personally a goalkeeper's a priority. That's a must. We've got to do something there at the back. But if we can't buy any of the players that we want, like Ahmad Gundia fan, I think he would be absolutely brilliant. I think a loan just to help Smith-Rowe out because he's a young lad with a lot of pressure on him and he's going to burn out before the season ends. Yeah, no,
I'm in complete agreement with you. It is risky to just bank all of your money on these guys. And in the 5 games, Smith-Rowe's been great in 4 of them. But in the last game against Crystal Palace, as Raheel pointed out, tactically, he was completely marked out of the game and he was ineffective. And in those moments where he did get to the byline and was able to cut back, his passes weren't great. They were kind of underpowered and not as accurate. So he is going to have off games. And there are times where you're going to have to bring him off the pitch or start someone else or rotate. Because we know this season is crazy with the fixture congestion and how much these fixtures are going to stack up. And we're still in the FA Cup and the Europa League. So changes are going to be needed. You can't play the same 11 every single week. It's just not going to be possible. And the positive news about the goalkeeper is that the club are actively looking in that direction. So I would be surprised if we didn't bring a keeper in before the end of the window. But I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't bring in a creative midfielder right now. But as I say, as Pablo, you were saying there, I think that if Arsenal don't bring someone in there in terms of a short-term deal, it's maybe a little bit naive. But I think if you do bring someone in a short-term deal there, you just kind of have to be careful about who that is. Like the Iscos, the Eriksens, their wages are also huge. You've just saved a lot of money by getting rid of Ozil. Do you want to spend all of that saved money on a player that maybe won't play loads or isn't going to be great when they come in? Maybe we should look to a kind of a more secondary option. Maybe even look within the Premier League at some players that aren't getting too many minutes and say, can we give you a 6 months with an option?
What about like lower leagues, Championship or League One? Like even a young upcoming player. I don't think Arsenal do enough business. We don't go get players from the lower leagues like Liverpool have done, Robertson or even Leicester took a chance on Maguire. I know a lot of people like, yeah. So yeah, I think we that might be another option. Maybe just we don't have scouts anymore. So whoever is looking for these players needs to go in the lower leagues and have a look at them. Maybe that might be an option.
Yeah, I think goalkeepers easier. I think there's quite a lot of goalkeepers out there that are kind of happy to be second string. We're being linked to Neto, and I don't see anything wrong with that as a possible person to bring in. And we saw Raheel obviously retire, which is a bit of a shame because maybe you could have done something for 6 months for us after leaving Saint-Etienne. But I think it's vital to get a goalkeeper in, as you guys have said. I think that the creative attacking midfield position is one that is less so, because we can, as Jared said, you could put Saka there, you could maybe put other players there. Joe Willock could play in that position to a much lesser extent. I don't have a lot of faith in the kid, but he can play there if he needs to. So it's much less pressing. The fullback in the goalkeeping area is a much larger gap than the creative midfield position, I think, in the team. But it's certainly something that needs to be looked at. As we approach the last 15 or so minutes of the show, this is you guys in the chat box, your opportunity to get involved and to ask a question to one of my three fantastic guests this evening. So if you have a question for the guys, drop it into the chat, use the capital Q to help it stand out, and we'll try and get through as many of them as possible. While we wait for those questions to come in, we've got a game in a couple of days. We usually do this at the end of the podcast, but I want to get you guys your predictions for the Newcastle match. So, Jared, I'm going to start with you, mate. What are your kind of thoughts ahead of that one?
Obviously, it's a home game against a lower half of the table team. It's one that we should definitely get a win and get 3 points out of. The interesting part to me is going to be who's available and who's in the starting lineup. We saw both Pablo Mari and Gabriel not play Thursday. So Mari, I know it sounds like he's got a bit of an injury. He may not be available. Maybe the first game we see Gabriel back, which sort of makes that transition easy. We had a lot of talk of, who should start, Mari or Gabriel, as they both played well. Well, if Mari's out injured, it kind of makes that decision easy for Arteta if he wants to get him back in there. And the other big one for me is Kieran Tierney. I think we saw Thursday how much we need him and how much we lean on him going forward. It's weird to say that of a defensive player and of a fullback, but he's vital to what we do going forward. So I think the availability of him will be the biggest kind of piece to the game. If he's there, I think it's one that we're going to go in and get a win and get 3 points. If he's out again, it may be tough sledding. We just didn't offer anything going forward on Thursday, and I didn't really see much to give us a lot of confidence in that area. And like the other guys, I think Raheel said earlier, we're pretty limited on impact substitutions. If you start Lacazette and Aubameyang, Tierney's out. If Saka doesn't come through like he has, Thursday he was a bit off, and if he remains that way on Monday, we really don't have anybody that's that impact player off the bench. Willian's offered nothing. Pepe certainly has offered nothing either. Joe Willock doesn't offer a lot. It's one of those things. If we can't go out in that first half or first 60 minutes and get a goal with our starters and get a lead, we really don't have anybody to turn to sort of change the tide of the game and get us going forward and really offer much. So that part of it makes me nervous, but I expect a strong lineup. And if Tierney's in it, I expect it's one that we should win and move forward to 3 points and get back on track.
Yeah, it is going to come down to the lineup and who is available. If Tierney's back, amazing news. If we start with Emile Smith-Rowe, I'll be a little bit surprised to see him start because he's played, as we say, 5 games in a row from the start. So I'm kind of anticipating some Emile Smith-Rowe rotation, which I don't think should come as a shock to too many people because of how much football he has played. But fingers crossed, Martinelli is going to be back as well, which should hopefully fill that gap with the dynamism of there. We've been inundated with questions, so I'm going to park you guys' predictions for the game until the end of the show, so we can tackle these questions as quick as possible. But as I say, there are quite a few, so we're going to try and go through as many as possible, so we can keep our answers as condensed and less Drew-like as possible. That would be appreciated. Raheel, I'll start with you. Matthew de Souza says, should we use the remainder of the league season to blood more youngsters, or is the priority still to finish as high as possible?
Finish as high as possible. Yeah, for me.
You can elaborate on that.
Okay. We already have quite a few youngsters. I think every team needs a balance. And I know a lot of Arsenal fans on social media, they have this notion that you can do great things with youngsters. A team full of youngsters, that's only happened once, and that was for Man United in 92. So, it's not a thing that's common. You need a balance, and if we just blood in more youngsters, I think at some point in the season we're going to really struggle. And even though these experienced players haven't been performing on the pitch, they do have experience. They have played so many games before. They have seen things before in the top leagues where these youngsters wouldn't have seen this before. So I think the priority would be to finish as high as possible and try to get into at least Europa League. Champions League is going to be tough this season, I think. So, yeah. And otherwise, it's going to be difficult to attract players in the summer. And unless we throw a lot of money at them, then we are again back with the same thing. We have those high-paid players, so it's kind of a vicious cycle, and we need to break the cycle and move into a new era with Arteta, hopefully. So yeah, I would try to finish as high as possible and blood in some of the youngsters that we have done so well so far.
I agree with you. I think that we kind of missed the boat on the blooding stage. We had the Europa League group stage. That was kind of the period where you could, and the lower kind of steps of the cup competition, which was unfortunate because we just continually played Premier League sides, and that seems to be the trend in the FA Cup this season as well. So there's not going to be too many opportunities in that sense. But no, I agree with you, and I think we should be taking the league as seriously as possible. Pablo, question from Omar, who is a long-time listener of the show and a valued member of our chat box, says, what's your thoughts on Pepe? Are you close to tapping out? I have, to be honest.
I've tapped out. I've really tried keeping the faith in him. I thought his price tag was kind of well over the top for the player that... I know people saying France, he was playing really well, but he had one season where he really shined. So I think we paid over the top for him, which that didn't help him because we've ended up putting more pressure on him, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to support him. I really want him to do well. He's one of them players that you just literally every game you go, this is the Pepe game. He's definitely going to do it. And it's just, I don't know whether he's playing out of position as well, because I personally prefer him on the left, where he can probably swing in. I think he's so predictable cutting in, because normally you have one or two players, a player that cuts in, he can use his weaker foot slightly. Pepe doesn't have one at all. So he becomes really predictable. So I've kind of given up on him. I think we could find better options out there.
Yeah, I wrote a piece on it this morning in 101. If I tweeted out on the account, you can find it on our Twitter account, about kind of what should we do. And I ended the piece by effectively saying that Arsenal should cut their losses right now and try and move him on as best we can. Jared, a question from Sam Dowie says, who would you play at left back if Tierney isn't fit, as Mainsley really doesn't seem to suit that role?
Yeah, Thursday was probably the worst showing we've seen from Mainsley that I remember in the last year, at least. It was really poor. And, outside of a signing, I think the only option we have, and it is a good one, is Saka moving there. He played there and played very well. And, he can kind of fill in what Tierney does pretty well. He's good at getting forward. He's good at crossing the ball. He can fill that gap really well, I think, short term, if Tierney is out a game or two. But as the guys said earlier, the problem that is up front, we're kind of lacking everything he brings on that end on the right side. So it's hard to find a balance. But as far as filling in for Tierney right now, I think Saka is the only choice.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Saka is... I understand the Pepe situation, and even though I'm in the same camp as Pablo about kind of, I think it's time to move on, there's always been this kind of discussion around, if we are going to play Pepe, how do we get the best from him? What position do you need to play him in? I've always thought it needs to be still in a right wing position, but closer to the striker, not so far out wide, so he has to always cut in. And there's always been this kind of rhetoric that maybe we should try him in a more central role, which I understand in when you play with two forwards in a 4-4-2 or in a 3-4-1-2 formation, but it doesn't really... It's not a system that we play, and I don't think we can sacrifice the vision that Arteta has for the squad just to squeeze Pepe into the team, when maybe the more sensible thing is to move on. I'm just going to take this question quickly from Jashar, who says, the Arsenal's £121 million loan taken, and which is repayable in May, makes me doubt that there will be any signings at all, which I know is a statement, but I'll take it as a question. But in terms of that loan, it's what that loan is to deal with the impact of there not being any match revenue, the impact of COVID on the team. It's nothing to do with transfers. The only way it impacts transfers is that the budget that would be maybe available for transfers is now much less affected by the COVID situation. So if anything, it should make you feel more positively about the possibility of transfers happening, not necessarily huge transfers happening, but just the fact that we could still do business. That's how it should make you feel. It shouldn't make you doubt it anymore. Let's go. What time is it? We got plenty of time, so we got a few more rounds of questions to go. Peter Renner, Raheel says, if we are unable to get a number 10 or another midfielder in January, would you give some game time in those positions to players like Aziz or Kurjan?
I don't think they should be starting, but maybe to come off the bench if things aren't working. Like you said, like we've gone past that stage where we can just throw in youngsters and hope they'll perform. If they were given more opportunities in the Europa League, like Smith Rowe did and Saka did last year and the season before, then yes, I would give them a chance. But now we're getting to the crunch time of the season where now we get into the Europa League knockout round. So I think it's a lot for them to be thrown into. I'm not saying they won't perform, but it is a massive risk to take. But then again, if your experienced players aren't doing the job, then I guess you wouldn't have another option but to throw him in. So it depends. If Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe can do the job for the entire season, which is very, very highly unlikely because it is a lot of games. So yeah, I would put them on the bench definitely, but not to start every game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think they're too young to be thrown in. Start of next season, I think, is when you'll start to see the more of the breakout from those two for sure. Also, we wrote a piece today on Catalan Kurjan. So Catalin Kurjan, I should say. If you want to check out and find out what he's about, there's some tactical stuff in there. Give it a read. Question from Zamir. This is actually a really interesting question. Maybe something in which we can solve the Tierney problem without having to sign a backup left back, Pablo. But he says, should we move to a back three when Tierney is not fit some games?
Personally, no. I don't think so. I found we lack creativity anyway, even with the 4-2-3-1 or that formation. Once we go with three at the back, I think that completely kills the game. It literally does. We've tried it. It worked in a few games, like against City, against Chelsea, the bigger games. But against teams like Newcastle, and no disrespect to them, but you need to go out and attack them. We can't really play defensive with them, and I find that formation too negative.
I think that I agree with you in the sense that it is kind of. It's certainly less creative, and we suffered at the start of the season when we were playing three at the back, and then when we switched to four, we weren't used to it, and we didn't really have the midfield and the defenders to cover that, so we started to concede goals, and to switch back to that would be quite turbulent, I suppose, for the team to have to then deal with switching back. The good point, and the reason I wanted to ask it is because Maitland-Niles, who I'm calling Maitland-Niles until he turns his form around, is I feel suits the left wing back slot a lot more than an unorthodox back four left back slot. And if we don't bring anyone in, maybe it would make sense. But is it worth sacrificing the creativity?
But we only played with a back three with Maitland-Niles. What Tierney was playing as a third.
Tierney. Oh, have we got a new name? Oh.
Well, why not? But so I don't know if that would work with just three regular center backs, because Tierney usually overlapped Maitland-Niles at points. If you remember the FA Cup games, he did that quite often. So it's going to be very difficult to play that formation with just three center backs. So I kind of agree with not playing the back three.
Interestingly, I suppose what the counter to that would be is maybe looking at playing either Chambers or Cedric in kind of an unorthodox right centre-back and switch the side. So Bellerin's got someone overlapping and maybe because obviously we played, I think it was with David Luiz or Holding as the right centre-back, and they never overlapped on that side. So maybe that's something that could happen. Let's carry on around the trio and go for 28 guy happy. Jared says, make a challenge for top four, so prioritise the league, or should we put in more emphasis on our Europa League campaign?
For me, it's always Europa League. I think we've talked about this when I was on with you before, kind of what's the easier to get top four, win the Europa League. And for me, the Europa League, you just have to, get on a good run of form to win 3 or 4 games in a row. And that's significantly easier to me than performing at a high level over 38 match weeks that are brutally tough in the Premier League. Top to bottom, it's very good this year. So for me, that answer is always the Europa League. And while I'd like to see us move up the table in the Prem, obviously, I would focus more on the Europa League games and make sure we get a good result out of those. I think we have a better chance of getting Champions League football that way.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And I think, as I said, I've said it about 10 times now, I think that people are sleeping on the Europa League this season. I'm kind of glad that we've got Benfica in that competition, because it means that hopefully Arteta will be taking it very seriously, putting in a strong 11 to try and beat them. They're a very good side. The Portuguese league, whilst from top to bottom in comparison to the Premier League, is very different in quality, but the top teams of Sporting, Porto and Benfica and Braga as well, who are a very decent side also. So there is a lot of quality in that league, and especially in Benfica themselves. And they've got an okay manager in Jorge Jesus, who's going to be coming in. Or is the Portuguese J? I mean, Pablo, you might be able to tell me. Portuguese, is it a hard J or is it a soft J?
Soft, Jesus.
Jesus, is it? And so, is it a Jorge Jesus? Is that, am I pronouncing that right? I hope so.
You've got to get mixed up with the Spanish.
Okay, yeah,
Spanish,
right. Right. I'm going to sit in front of the mirror and just practice these over and over again until I get it right. I mean, I learned Sobosly pretty quickly, but I need to get practicing with those ones.
I'm still struggling.
Where are we at? So, what the hell is that? I'm going to move on. I can't even read it. Could we play Partey as a left back? Says Patrick Carlson Raheel. Is that an option?
Oh, that's a tough question. No, definitely not.
So it's a pretty easy question.
Yeah, I know. I was being sarcastic. No ways, because we need his presence in the midfield. We can't sacrifice
then, because someone said, because Xhaka's played at left back before, and has deputised there, and sometimes naturally moves into that slot. If we've got Ceballos, who played, I thought, very well in the first half against Crystal Palace, and you partnered Ceballos with Partey, could you then put Xhaka as an unorthodox left back?
Yeah, I think Xhaka fits into that role better because he's a left-footed player. We saw with Mainsley or Maitland-Niles, now that you're calling him Maitland-Niles, that he struggled as a left back, because even when I think it was the first half where he overlapped like the way Tierney normally does, and he put in a cross and that went all the way in row Z. So I think I would prefer Xhaka to play in that left back position. And I honestly, I just want to see Partey play in the midfield. Like, we haven't seen him since we signed him. So I don't want him to be playing left back. I want him to be playing in this position that we bought him for. So personally, no, I would play Xhaka rather than Partey.
Yeah. I know Zamir and Yannick are very much not fans of seeing, and Igro as well, not fans of seeing Partey or Xhaka, I think, playing at left back. Let me scroll up, because I think I did miss quite a few questions at the start. Ansgar Pablo says, would you go for Maddison? I would like to see us to go for him rather than Aouar. He feels similar to the Pepe Zaha situation.
Oh, that's a tough question, because I do like Maddison. I think Maddison's really, really good. Don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, I've not seen enough of Aouar, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people sort of really rave about him and say he's really good. I've watched your tactical thing about him as well. But just through what I've seen, I'd personally go for Maddison, Premier League. I don't think we sign enough Premier League players. I think that's an issue with us. We try going for the sort of foreign, I suppose, cheaper option, or the big names from far. And when it comes to playing the Premier League, they just don't seem to just grasp with it. Always, even if they do, it'll take you a season or two. We're at a stage in our development that I don't think we've got a season or two to wait for players. We need players that are going to come in and do the job straight away. And Maddison in our team, I think it'd be a brilliant signing.
I think that's one of the main things that the club get put off by Premier League players is the price. But then I look back and we've spent £72 million on Pepe, and we've spent 35 to £40 million on Xhaka, and £34 million on Mustafi. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, Johnny Evans went for 10 million, and we've got Mustafi for 3 times the price. Like, it made no sense at the time. And I think there is a little bit of snobbiness, I suppose is the right word, around some of the fan base and some of the signings that we miss out on, and then a level of arrogance about some signings, and we do need to get past that, and we do need to look at some of the signings that have been made in the Premier League that have gone from one club to another and have succeeded, and even looking down at the Championship. We discussed this earlier. I think, Raheel, you were bringing it up as well about some of the players in the Championship that we may have slept on a bit. West Ham got Ben Rama, of course, and they got Jared Bowen and Mikel Antonio have all come from the Championship. Leicester have done well from signing players there, and and it's something that maybe needs a little bit more focus, not just the Premier League, but elsewhere in the footballing pyramid of England also. Final question is going to come from Lords, and Jared, he asks, has Aubameyang gotten slower? He looks like he has lost a yard of pace. Shocked Webster managed to keep up with him.
It certainly looks that way sometimes. I think a lot of it's his body language. Things aren't going well. And you see that a lot of times in strikers. When they're not scoring goals, they just look a little bit off it. And he's looked a little sluggish and off the pace. That said, it's a little bit of a momentum game. And I think if he would come out and get a goal, 2 games in a row, he would kind of get that bounce back that we're all used to seeing, see the smile, the energy, all those things that we love about him when he's playing well. I think it's just a matter of poor form currently, but not something he can't get back with a couple of good showings.
I think it's an area that we need to. It's almost as if when you're looking at Aubameyang as a player and you're looking at his stature in the team and you're looking at the fact that Arteta is close to him in age, does he have the front to drop him? Does he have the cojones, as Troy Deeney would say, to drop Aubameyang from the team? But do you think he does, Jared, or not?
I'd like to say yes, but from what we've seen so far, you'd have to say no. I don't remember the last time, he really was dropped from a big game for performance reasons that weren't related to a supposed injury. But, when a guy's not playing well, it happens to everybody at some point or another. If Martinelli's fit on Monday, I would love to see ESR at 10 playing behind Martinelli, Lacazette, and Saka, with Alba as sort of, that super sub we can come with off the bench. I'm not confident that'll happen, but I would absolutely love to see it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more options than maybe some people realise, but the issue is that those options are quite a drop-off of our first 11, which is a completely legitimate way of thinking about the squad right now. That's going to wrap up today's show, other than getting your scoreline predictions for Newcastle on Monday. So, Raheel, I'll start with you. What is your scoreline and a predicted first scorer, please?
Again, I think Jared mentioned depends on who is fit and who starts, because if Tierney isn't there, then we're going to have a very similar game to Crystal Palace. Of course, Newcastle are going to come with 20 players behind the ball, and we're going to struggle to break them down. So I'm going to go with a 1-0, and going to go with a Lacazette goal.
I think that Lacazette's got a good chance of scoring in this game. He's going to really want to kind of avenge that missed opportunity against Crystal Palace that Bellerin took off his feet, which was just always rude. Pablo, what are you going for?
I'm going to go for 1-0 to the Arsenal, and Gabriel scoring from a corner.
Very lovely stuff. Got that Brazilian bias there.
At the moment, that well. So
lovely stuff. Jared, scoreline, predicted first scorer.
For me, I'm going to go 2-0 to the Arsenal, and I'm with you. I like Lacazette to get a goal on Monday.
Awesome. Fantastic stuff. Last thing for me to do is to thank my fantastic panel. You've probably seen some really nice comments in the chat box as well for you guys. It's been an absolutely fantastic show. I always say this, genuinely, it's not necessarily it's a bad thing that it surprises me how well people come on, but especially because some people have never done podcasts before and they've never jumped on and done it. It's been absolutely great. Raheel, thank you for coming on, mate. I hope you've enjoyed it. And do you want to give a quick plug to your side of things?
Thanks, Tom, for having me. It was great chatting to all of you, and some great comments there. I've been reading them. So thanks, guys, for the support. Really, really appreciate that. Yes, I just quickly mentioned we have a football channel called The Real Talk FC. We talk all things football. There is another channel, but it's not related to football. But if you go on the Football FC, the Real Talk FC channel, you'll see the featured channel below. So yeah, please check it out. And yeah, thanks for the support.
He's already got my subscription, so if there's a reason for you guys to check it out, make sure you go and check out Raheel's stuff. He's given some fantastic answers, so if you want to hear more from him, please do go check it out. In fact, I'll probably edit the description and leave a link to it as well, so you can check that out.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
No worries, mate. Pablo, absolute pleasure to have you on, fella. Really appreciate your time. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, not physically, but just on your social media?
I don't want to be found. First of all, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do this. It's really, really good. Brilliant questions coming in, and to actually be on this side of it rather than being the one asking the questions is really fun. I kind of really enjoyed it. Well, as you can see on my thing there, Pablo Mira 11, Twitter, that's about the only thing I've really got, to be honest with you. It's my first YouTube or anything like that appearance. So,
awesome. I mean, for your first appearance ever anywhere, it's been great, mate. So thank you for joining us. No worries, fella. And finally, you know him by now, Chicago Gooner, Jared. Thank you as always, mate. Pleasure to speak to you again. I'm sure we'll see you very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. It's always a blast to come on to talk with you and the guys who, we're used to talking to in the live chat when you've got other shows going. So it's nice to put some faces to names and get to chat with, some of the other flying fish out there in the TGT community.
Yes, the flying fish crew. That's absolutely brilliant stuff. Get some flying fish in the chat, people. Our members of your emojis, get them flowing. And speaking of which, if you'd like to experience what Pablo, I think, is describing as the best day of his life this evening, then you can come and join us on the show by becoming an expert or a TGT ambassador. You also get access to the Discord server as well, which is just 24/7 chat because there's people from all different time zones, so it never stops all day long. And it's some really good stuff and some good chat in there as well. So come join us and help out. But if you've enjoyed the show, just anyway, please drop a like on it. Go give the guys a follow on their social medias and their channels if they've got them. And we will see you again very, very soon. I'll see you tomorrow for the preview show ahead of the Newcastle match. And then I'll be with you straight after the Newcastle game for the Raw Reaction show too. So we'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, well, how do we end the show, guys?
Up the Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.